Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I feel very honored to be invited to this event to give a laudatio to Andres Olarte. And of course, it's kind of a strange situation to give a laudatio to a laudandor who's not here. Yeah, and maybe this has also something to do with the dialectics of whistleblowing and all kinds of civil resistance, because the crucial point, and Anniket Falter already mentioned it, is that whistleblowers, or people who do kinds of resistance in a given societies, are not appreciated by this society. This is a very simple fact, yeah? And they don't have to expect glory and honor, but they have to expect something like contempt, like persecution, things like that. So it is a really dialectical thing, and Andres had all these experiences of losing his job, of having difficulties to find another position, of having to leave his country, of having to readopt himself into a new situation, and all kinds of things. So for people who don't have this experience, as I, for example, it is very easy to glorify something like this. But for the people who do it and have to experience all these negative results of their own action, it is something very difficult. And I think this is extremely important to think about that, and I will make some remarks about this after I make a very brief report on what Andres did, and I can do it because the panel discussion and also Alexander von Bismarck will go deeply into this special case, because this is the agency that worked with the data that Andres provided and made further investigations and things like that. So the case was simply that Andres is an environmental and energy advisor, and in this professional respect, he was hired by a company, by a Colombian company with a really dialectical name, Ecopetrol. Ecopetrol, and which is the largest company in this country, and is, as the name, the second part of the name says, engaged in fossil energies and all kinds of energy production and things like that. And companies who work in these fields have, of course, always the problem that they destroy the environment. And they have to be careful not to destroy it too much and things like that. And Andres was the advisor to the CEO of this company and also the advisor to the vice president for sustainability of this company. And in this function, he was confronted, of course, with certain cases of environmental pollution, but not only of the factual thing, but also of the fact that the people who were suffering from these environmental problems were really something that that motivated him to do something against it. That means to go into certain cases that were registered in this company, and he found the fact that there were more than 800 cases of problems with oil pollutions in sensible environmental areas. And the even more crucial thing was that only around about 600 or something of these cases were officially reported, and 1/5 of all the cases were things that only the company knew and nobody else. And this was combined with the situation of the suffering people, something that made him go deeper into these things, made him to collect data about all these cases, make him store these data, and thinking about what to do with it. And the end of the story is that he lost his job. The contract was not prolonged because there was kind of rumor about that he did things that were not really good in the eyes of the company, and that he was also threatened by strange calls on the telephone and things like that, and the situation in the country became more and more problematic even after he had to leave the company. So this is very briefly the situation. The whole case is about systemic illegal activities of a huge company with really severe impact on the environment and on the people of Colombia. This is something. And there's a documentary done by BBC last year. It was published, which is very interesting. I recommend to see it. And there's this complete investigation by what Alexander will also mention. So this is what Andres did. And my professional work as a social psychologist had also something to do not with whistleblowers, but with people who expose deviant behavior under repressive circumstances, which means, for example, helpers and rescuers of Jews during National Socialism, things like that. And when we did studies about that, there were many very interesting points that I want to mention here in this laudatory speech, and they are all difficult things. Because normally we have this idea, and people learn that at school, especially in Holocaust education, under the framework of Nie wieder, that it was something really necessary and honorable to help people, to rescue people, to do things like that. And what is completely neglected in this image of rescuers and helpers and also of whistleblowers is that these people, under the given contemporary circumstances and also under the actual circumstances, are not conform acting people, but they are deviant people. And this is not appreciated by the rest of the society. So when we now, like, for example, Margot Friedländer or others, are heroes in this country and imagined as really, really heroic persons, as people who have been rescued. And also the helpers, like Oskar Schindler, so are communicated and designed in public communication as people who did really good things. But in a contemporary perspective, we had a social situation where like 90% of the people of a given society would have thought these are Volksschädlinge, these are criminals, these are deviant people. So we mistake, if we have, a kind of picture of an image of these people, that they do something under historical given conditions that would have been appreciated by most of the normal and ordinary people. This is completely wrong. And I say this because it makes it even more difficult for people to decide to help others or to behave resistant or to become a whistleblower, because everybody, as a member of a given society, knows that this is deviant behavior and not affirmative, conform behavior. And this is really important to understand, because from my point of view, and we investigated many of these cases, people who do things like that don't act under a kind of a romantic, universal moral conviction. They are not good people, but they have some kind of a feeling that there's something going wrong and it is their specific responsibility to do something about it. But this point is really important because kids are taught that it is about universalistic responsibility. It's about universalistic morality, and that it's really easy to have something like this because we all learned this. For example, this should never happen again, that everybody should be encouraged and brave, and it will be appreciated by everybody else. But this is not the case. It's simply not the case. And what cases like Andres' case can teach us, and many other cases of people who were under very severe danger, under very problematic conditions, professionally working on types of resistance of this kind, what we can learn is that they didn't follow necessarily universalistic moral convictions, but they would follow particular moralistic convictions and responsibilities. And I think this is a really important point. If you see Andres in a specific situation as a young engineer in a very important company with a career in front of him, something to achieve, and then being confronted with something that he individually thought, this is not possible, this is a crime. This has also a dimension where you cannot say, okay, this is just one case. All the other things that these companies do are quite okay. I can cope with it, or whatever you can think in a situation like this. He was, in this particular manner, responsible. Yeah? Independently of all other political, moralistic, religious, or whatever ideas he had. But there was a specific thing that he would have said, this is not possible to tolerate this. Yeah? And then it's another thing. If you want to do something like this, to help persecuted people or to open up a public discussion about criminal activities of countries or of companies and things like that, you have to know how to do it. Yeah, we have, especially in the case of Holocaust helpers and rescuers, romantic images of good people who would easily go into the situations, especially searching for people who can be rescued and things like that. And this is a complete wrong picture, because people who did this, we had here in Berlin and in other cities, networks of helpers, of helping people. Why networks? Because you need many qualifications to help people under totalitarian and repressive and oppressive conditions. You need people who have flats, who have places where people can be covered. You need people who can fake documents and all these things. And you have to know others who can do things that you can address to help them, which also means that people become helpers and rescuers who had not ever had the idea to do something like this. But they become involved into a situation because they can professionally help and are asked. It's because of social responsibilities and things like that. So, and this is quite interesting, because it is not very good if people try to help or be resistant or do kind of investigations if they don't know how to do it, because then they are very much more in danger for themselves, as they are anyway. And the other thing is that they are also bringing people in danger that they want that they want to help or to be rescued. But the thing is that in a theoretical perspective, the really important thing is that we cannot rely on moral convictions on a universalistic level. What we have to teach, and where these cases like Andres is representing is so very important, is that we have to learn that particular responsibility is the most important thing, because this requires exact interpretation of the situation, an exact interpretation of the resources you have, what you can do with it, and also ideas who can be integrated in the whole process. So it's a professional thing, and it is something where the scope of what you can do is exactly defined. It's not about saving the world or killing capitalism or whatever, yeah? Saving the environment. It's about a precise estimation of what my particular responsibility is and what I can do to fulfill this responsibility. This is, in one, if we turn it into teaching strategies, in one respect, it's much easier than this big thing, nie wieder. On the other hand, in a concrete situation, it is very difficult, because maybe many people have this impulse and think, oh, this is not okay, what is going on here. But the most problematic thing under oppressive, repressive conditions is that we all, and so most of the people that are existing, have good reasons not to do anything. Yeah, this is the greatest problem. People always have reasons. Yeah, they have to pay their rent, they have kids at home, they have their old grandma, and whatever. Yeah, and this is the reason, and this is very simple, that the probability that people won't follow their impulse, their moral impulse, that this probability is much higher than the probability that people would do something like Andres did. Okay? And I think this occasion to give a laudatio to somebody who's not here goes directly into these dialectics, because it's really not easy to continue your life after you have something done like this and experience the consequences of this. Therefore, maybe this day, this award-giving day today, is an occasion to have a more difficult, complicated reflection about what it requires to do something like this, and also a more difficult and scrupulous reflection about teaching or establishing norms about what people should do and whatever. And I think the most important thing, this is something I have learned out of my research, that is absolutely necessary never to trust your own convictions that you have in a certain time, in a given time, because with changing norms in societies, people they tend to change their moral convictions, their perceptions of reality and things like that. We have seen this, especially in Germany, in these years between 1933 and 1941. I can't go deeply into it, but this is a very important thing where you can see that quite ordinary people who would perceive themselves as part of a modern Western society with a big background in education, in literature, in philosophy, and things like that, would within very few years find it completely acceptable and normal that people are persecuted and deported and killed. Okay? And this is for social psychologists a really really, really frightening example, because here you can see that the probability that people try to think and say and act like everybody else thinks and says and acts is so great, because we are oriented always in what the others do. And therefore, the deviant behavior of the few people, and there are always really few people, yeah? Whistleblowing is not something like a mass movement. Is really something where we should really think serious about it. And also, and therefore it's a pity that Andres is not here, therefore investigate or interpret and find out what the possibilities of broaden such a behavior that follows particular morality. I think this is really a big task for all kinds of history education and political education, not something like a very for free blah blah about nie wieder and things like that, because it's very easy to agree with it, but this doesn't say anything about what people would do in an actual concrete situation. So my last words would have been to Andres, as he is not here. This is what I wanted to say, and I will talk to him, of course, afterwards, maybe tomorrow or the other day. We just talked yesterday to each other, and therefore the situation is like the situation is, and we cannot go deeply into the psychological pressure that such an act that he did and that we celebrate here and where he's awarded for, what that means. So it's not, I mean, is it an occasion to have something like a celebration, or is it more an occasion to have a reflection about it? I find it really difficult in this situation. But anyway, I'm the laudator and I'm finished. Thank you very much.